one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is roll call. Madam Clerk? Oh, I'm sorry. Great, thank you. I'll say, Clerk Peck. Sorry about that.
Okay, taking roll. Counselor Granda?
Here.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Here.
Osenga?
Here.
McClure?
Here.
Wells? And Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. We have one public hearing resolution. So folks wanting to speak to that will hold off until that opportunity. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, 36 minutes total time for this agenda item. And if you could state your name at the podium and outside or inside city limits. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak?
We have one person on the list, Tim McDonald.
Okay.
Forgive my casual attire. Tim McDonald, Seward, Alaska, inside city limits. Selling the utility is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. First off, you disenfranchise about 60 or 70% of your customers that live outside city limits who can't vote on this. And also, why would you give it to a third party? Give it to us, co-op, 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 co-op. No sale. That's betraying the people of Seward. Okay, I think I made that clear. Next thing is, there's only one answer to Lowell Point Road. And I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. It's a 20 to 24 foot pipe, 1 inch thick steel, 1.5 miles of it laid down there, backfill the back of it, shim the front of it so the slides go right over the top of it. Put lights down the middle, you got a 2-lane road, you'll never have to clear a slide again. Might cost you 20 or 30 million, but so what? You're spending money like water anyway. So that is the only solution, or you're going to be doing that forever, because you got a 1,000-foot cliff hanging over that road the whole length of it, basically. So you don't have much choice. And then the other thing, I want to bring up what I was talking about last week, and that's that 60 or 70% of the people of Seward don't get to vote because they live outside the city limits line. That's a complete disenfranchisement. There's people out there that have been here 50 years, lots of them are longer. There are school teachers, they work here. You know, those people are citizens of Seward and they don't have a vote. And it's a complete disenfranchisement of the voter population that we should have. And I mean, you say that they don't want to be part of it, that doesn't matter. It's your job to make them want it to do it. You have to improve your game so that those people want to be part of the city. So it's your responsibility, it's on you. And anybody that says it's their fault, that's a terrible excuse. It's your job to make them come into the city and make it appropriate, make them happy, whether it's moratoriums, 5-year deals, or whatever you have to do to allay their fears about enforcement of anything that's wrong out there as far as building standards or whatever. You can do it. So that is the most important thing. Without it, you're disenfranchising us and you're not even a representative government. You're some form of communism or socialism or fascism, but it's sure not, definitely not democracy. So get your act together and get those people inside the city limits.
Has anyone else signed in to speak? Uh-oh.
There we go. No one else is on the list.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in the public? Now's your opportunity. Hearing and seeing none, next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Right off the bat, I'll go ahead and pull item B3 from other new business from the consent agenda. So it'll stay on the agenda, just pulling it from consent. Sorry? Non-objection to the renewal of the liquor license number 5903 Restaurant Eating Place Public Convenience for the Lone Chicharron Taqueria. Are there any other changes or amendments to the agenda? No? Clerk Peck, I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay, voting on the agenda and consent agenda. Demas,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Casagrande,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Okay, the agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and you have approved the following items on the consent agenda. Now bear with me here, this will be a bit of reading.
Take your time.
So Resolution 2022-061, authorizing and appropriating $7,200 in private donations for the purpose of purchasing additional walking tour maps. Resolution 2022-062, authorizing the city manager to appropriate funds to rent and leases for sports and recreation in the amount of $18,150 for the use of AvTech from April 2022 through June 2022. Resolution 2022-063, accepting and appropriating FY22 Coronavirus State Local Recovery Federal Grant Funds in the amount of $577,195. Resolution 2022-064, authorizing the city manager to enter into a special services agreement with Coldfoot Environmental Services, Inc. for final cleanup of the Jesse Lee home property in an amount not to exceed $95,603.11 and appropriating funds. Resolution 2022-065, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Sturgeon Electric Company in a not to exceed amount of $319,006.72, fully reimbursable by the Alaska Department of Transportation to complete power line relocation work between milepost 17 to 22.5 of the Seward Highway to accommodate AKDOT's road improvement work. Resolution 2022-066, authorizing the city manager to enter the negotiated collective bargaining agreement with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, effective July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2025. Approval of the April 25th, 2022 City Council special meeting minutes and approval of the April 25th, 2022 City Council regular meeting minutes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is special orders, presentations, and reports. And we have a number of presentations and awards, and I'm going to go behind this way. First on the agenda, if I could have Councilmember Cheryl Seeks come up here. So super fancy. From the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Seward, Alaska, presented to Cheryl Seeks for excellent leadership and dedicated service on the Seward City Council, serving people of Seward from June 18th to October 2021. Thank you for your service.
The best part now is that we don't have meetings quite as long as we had them. But I really enjoyed being on and being part of the city. And I plan on still kind of hanging around, but I'll be in the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll give you this one.
Thank you.
Thank you. I might say Gary Cease will be at the next meeting, so we'll have his recognition for his service at the next meeting. And now we have recognizing Tom Swan. So you have a gold pan, so your next vocation could be panning for gold with your gold pan. This is presented to Tom Swan for excellent leadership and service to the people of Seward on the Planning and Zoning Commission from September 22, 2014 to February 28, 2022. So thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure to have been able to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now, presenting to Craig Ambrosiani. I saw he was also in the house. So this is a nice one too. So this says, from the mayor and the city council of the city of Seward, Alaska, presented to Craig Ambrosiani for excellent leadership and dedicated service on the Planning and Zoning Commission, serving the people of Seward from June 13th, 2016 to February 28, 2022. Thank you for your time.
Just thank you for letting me help out the city by being on P&Z, and good luck with your future challenges. Keep pulling the community together, because that's where the answers are.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll come back, because is there someone here for blessing of the fleet? I'll read that from my, I'll be right back. Sorry, it's a little awkward walking out in the hall, but we'll get there. So this is the blessing of the fleet, so I'm going to read that from my place, because I don't think there's anyone here to accept it. Whereas since the 1980s, Seward Traditional Harbor Opening has kicked off the boating season on the third weekend in May each year, whereas on May 21st and 22nd of 2022, there will be activities scheduled to honor and celebrate this long-standing tradition. So Saturday, the 21st, there's a sailor swap meet at Sailing Inc. from 10 to 2, sponsored by the Kenai Fjords Yacht Club and William H. Seward Yacht Club. All proceeds to benefit the Seward Mariners Memorial. There's going to be a mermaid festival from 10 to 6 at the South Harbor parking lot, featuring kids' activities, vendors, live music, and a beer garden. Military Appreciation Hot Dog Barbecue at the Harbor Plaza at noon. Seward Mariners Memorial Plaque Installation service at 3:30, and that's at the Mariners Memorial on the South Harbor Uplands. There'll be a blessing of the fleet at 4 p.m. at the Mariners Memorial, and there'll also be a boat parade from the harbor entrance to the Alaska Sea Life Center and back immediately following the blessing of the fleet, and that is super fun. If you haven't seen that, that's it's really neat to be along the shore and watch that. And then Sunday, May 22nd, there'll be breakfast with the mermaids at Mermaid Grotto on Port Avenue, which sounds very racy, but now therefore I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby proclaim the weekend of May 21st and 22nd, 2022 as Harbor Opening, Blessing of the Fleet, and Mermaid Festival, and invite all citizens to join in celebrating this important part of Seward's rich nautical history. So we hope to see everyone from the community out there and all our visitors from around the state. So thank you for that. So next on the agenda is the city manager's report, and that starts on page 5 in your packet, and I'll turn that over to the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One item that I wanted to touch on that's on page 5 of the written report is regarding the audit. We had an exit interview with the auditors, and the auditors reported that the process and the information provided to them has greatly improved over last year, making the audit process for them on their side smoother, and they were able to receive all of the information that they needed. They are going back to write the report, and they will have a draft report to us. I'd like to say soon, but it'll be several weeks before that happens. So I'm super pleased to report that, and that's the hard work of our finance department and of the Carmen Jackson team. I wanted to speak about the Low Point Road landslide and where we are now. I'm quite certain that you all have the public information of what happened, so I'll skip through that and where we are now. NETCO is building what they are calling a ledge so that they can get to the top of the slide. They're going to work from the top down of the slide. They are really driving the time frame as far as When they're in there, things today look stable. There were still slides coming, but they were able to work through that. And at some point, it becomes unstable. They will back off until it stabilizes. So they're going to continue working. What you're seeing, we've been asked if this is like the part of the road. It is not. It is the ledge that's being created to get up to the top. So, of course, then the barricades will stay in place. They are being manned 24 hours by the police department because there are some people that want to go down into the slide area and it's not safe, and we want to prevent that. So that work will continue. The state geologist has contacted me today, and I just received an email from her with some thoughts and further questions. There's been a drone, it's actually by one of our employees who did a really good drone video, James Unryan, and I sent that drone information to her. There's also going to be a state, I think they're called dronologists now, I'm not sure, but that will be here within the next few days as well. In that, when that person comes, they will also do some LiDAR information. So then we will have further information, not just about the slide area, but the whole entire area. At least that's what we've been told so far. So that will occur probably later in the week. And we definitely want the information. There are some concerns about, so this is, I'm saying the north slide, there's the middle where there's no slide and the south where there's the previous slide. There are some concerns about whether the middle will go as we're doing cleanup on the north slide. So that's something that the geologist is helping, looking at all of the drone information and the new drone information. Today there was that firm who, about blasting, there's a firm that they're also looking to see if there needs to be, several years ago there was some scaling. There's people that came that scaled the slide area. They are going to do that as well, tentatively scale that, and if there needs to be any form of blasting to blast out some of the remaining boulders. That is super tentative, and I'm not quite sure that that's going to happen. But they are examining it as well for if they need to scale and secure anything or take something out to be able to continue on in the process. In the meantime, there's, as we know, Miller's Water Taxi, thankfully, going from Seward to Lowell Point and then back again. There's dedicated parking the South Harbor Uplands, the S-Float, for those that are coming for Lowell Point purposes. We do know that they have visitors that are coming, and we want to accommodate them to be able to park there and then take the water taxi on to Lowell Point. So that is occurring as well for that parking. I've been working with Brenda Alberg from the Borough Emergency Services, and they are working with the Lowell Point residents. So as we get calls, Brenda's cell phone number is out for those residents to call. The site of the slide is on our side. It's the city portion of it. So all of the needs of Lowell Point, the borough is addressing. That's their role in addressing that. I believe that as far as time frame, I really can't say a time frame because, again, Metco is creating the ledge to get to the top for removal. We don't know how long it will take them to get to the top. They made quite a bit of progress today from this morning. We are going out twice a day on a boat to document progress and to make sure how things are going there. And so we'll continue to do that. But I do believe it would be several weeks, maybe even a month before this was really cleared. But that's all subject to change. Every single component of this slide is subject to change. So that's going on. And so then after it is cleared and things are stable and traffic is moving again, I definitely want to have further conversation about the road itself and then the plat grant that we do have. We'll have that further conversation. Excuse me, while I'm thinking about it as well, our utilities that we have there are the electric and then the sewer lines. Those are both fine. Everything is functioning fine. The electric is in the ground from the cannery on, so that's very good news. It had been overhead lines, they probably would have been taken out. So that's going well. Their sewer is functioning. There is an alarm system on the sewer plant. None of the alarms have been triggered. The crew is making it over to the sewer plant every day to do their work that they've always done, but they're making it over there every day. Anything that I may have left out or questions that you might have that I might be able to answer?
So let's, we'll check in with you on the rest of your report. Let's just ask first, are there questions pertaining to the slide information? I do want to note, thank you for bringing up that flat grant that we have, and I think that does make sense. Let's get through this, and then definitely thank you for bringing that up. We'll, obviously as a body, and also be working with the borough on, clearly what that road needs to look like in the future.
And I know that we have our borough assembly member here, so we'll definitely be working with the borough. It's a big project that we will need to partner with and most likely bring the state in on as well. So that, as you stated, after we make it through this event, then we'll start that process of the partnership and further conversation. I do want to acknowledge all that, all departments at the city. It's all hands on deck. We did have the shelter. I do have some notes from the other night. We did stand up what I call an EOC light, Emergency Operations Center light. Not every department came in, but those who needed to came in, and we opened the shelter at the high school. We did not have anyone come. So I believe it was about 2 a.m. the shelter closed, and then the number for dispatch was left in case someone needed a shelter. That was for those folks that were here that could not make it back after dark. The water taxi had ended and could not make it back there. So they had that option, and we didn't have anyone. We're continuing to have city meetings every morning to check in on the status of what's going on and what we need to be doing and how we can assist. And then, as you know, putting out as much public information that we are able to do so. The state has been great. NOAA contacted me. They are doing what they're calling spot forecasting. They entered the coordinates in for the slide, and every morning I'm getting an email with the weather forecast for the day, so that way we know about the winds and possible rain and any other events that we can pass on to METCO and the state geologist as well.
Did that spark any other questions or comments?
Will there be more people clearing to assist METCO, or is it just METCO?
At this time, it's not stable enough to bring anything else in. So this excavator is the only one that can actually fit in the area at this time, and it's not stable enough. They will. There is another piece of equipment that is clearing the trees. I don't know the name of the equipment. That are clearing the trees and taking the trees out. Just as another note about the trees, there may be some trees that we already know that there are trees going in the bay. Those that are now going in are because they could not get them out onto to be taken out. They're moving the trees out so they don't go in the bay, as many of them. The Coast Guard has been notified. They're putting out notices twice a day to let everyone know that there could be trees, watch for trees. So that some will fall in and we may or may not be able to get them out. Those will stay, and as much as possible they will be set to the side to be taken out by truck.
That answer the question. Follow up. Okay. And then, is there anything else you wanted to highlight with your rest of your report? I do have a question, but I'll let you if there's anything else.
I do want to add, everyone is, but I did declare an emergency, which allows FEMA funding, and then the special meeting at noon on Thursday to ratify what I did, because it will extend past the 7 days.
So on Thursday at noon, we'll have special meetings. I have a question on your manager's report. We passed it with the consent agenda, and that was accepting the FY 2022 coronavirus state, local recovery, federal grant funds. So there is a breakdown in the packet. I wonder if you could just maybe verbally go over what that money's going to be utilized for.
Okay.
just to highlight for the
Sure.
community to know that we did receive more funds.
Correct, yes, thank you. So you notice that I'm going to start at the bottom with the lost revenue relief funds. We received 1.8 million, and those funds are truly for our lost revenue. And then part of that is going then to go into water sewer infrastructure. So I'd have to go back to the resolution to see what that breakdown is, and I don't have that information off the top of my head, but that will be used for lost revenue and then the water sewer infrastructure.
And that was previously adopted.
Yes,
Yeah,
by
yeah,
council.
yeah.
The two above it are, involve the library, as you can see for the server and cameras. I should state that within there are the rules of how we can use the funding, and so we're making sure that we stay within the rules of how we can use the funding. For most of the funding, I'm sorry, I'm going to go up above the library grants. This is the CPB funding so this funding, although the borough is calling it CPB, it truly isn't CPV funding. It's a pass-through to the borough, and that's their mechanism to pass it through, is through calling the CPV. However, within the rules, and we have to write a letter stating what we're going to use it for, and so it's been water sewer infrastructure. So each of these have been, with the exception of this one, is for electric. And the council adopted that, accepting it, using it for the electric project. So that's included with the bond funds that we have. Above that also is, this one is the federal side of CPV, even though it's not CPV, that's allowable use as water sewer infrastructure. The new one is in the blue, again, water sewer infrastructure. And above that is the lost revenue, true lost revenue goes into, I believe that went into the general fund. Above that one is a small amount for fish lost revenue.
Okay, thank you. So the one that we adopted this evening goes into water and sewer infrastructure,
Yes.
just so the public is aware that we're able to put into those enterprise funds. Are there any other questions for the city manager's report? Oh, I actually have something, I've had a citizen ask, again, if there's opportunity to have our business licenses listed on our city website. Like, who has a current business license? Is that possible? Is that something we could do? Go ahead.
Don't they need a state license to have a city license, and couldn't they just
Search by city.
search by state license?
It's public information. It hasn't been done, and there's nothing in code to compel you to do it, but at the direction of council, we can furnish that information.
I mean, I just was, I think they want to use it as a tool to see what services are specific to Seward, and then also, I think, police their neighbors if they have a business license or not. Maybe something to think about. Go ahead.
I'm supportive of it. I'm all about public information. I don't know what the cost would be, but we can think about it. I support it.
We don't have to make any decisions tonight, so maybe if we think about it and bring something back, I'll think if there's something we can bring back for discussion. Okay, thank you. Any other questions with the city manager's report? Thank you. Next on the agenda is the city attorney's report, and you can find that starting on page 25. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
You're good.
Okay. I'm Sam Severin, one of the city attorneys. Our reports, I think, rarely make for riveting content. A lot of it is behind the scenes, kind of document intensive, and then if it's not that, it tends to be private, or confidential. So and then some of this is matters that Brooks is working on, but the couple that I thought that I would highlight that I think are just interesting is one, we always put personnel matters on there, and I know like in the last couple months I've spent a lot of time on that, but that is by nature not something we should be talking about here. So if anybody ever does have any, it just kind of goes on there as worked on personnel matters, but those tend to come up quickly and require a lot of time and are fact intensive and legally can be challenging. So if anybody ever has questions about what that means, we can talk about that in executive session. I just bring that up because I know I've been handling that for the city lately. The other one that I thought was just interesting is the Ibew contract, and the reason I bring that up is just because that was, we don't often come down a lot unless specifically invited. Always glad to come down, and I'm glad to be here tonight. But that was an opportunity for, we did come down to do that negotiation in person to help with that. It was 3 days, and it was 2 attorneys for the first 2 days, and then I was unable to make it for the last day. I had a family issue come up. But I just bring that up because it was just an interesting opportunity to get to know. I think we were helpful and effective, and it's an interesting way to just get to know the issues that are going on with that particular group, become familiar with that CBA. And one of the attorneys, Mr. Munson, who came down for the first day, is probably our sort of foremost expert on labor and employment issues, but hasn't been doing a ton of work for Seward. So it was an opportunity for him to come down and participate. And so that was just, I think, a positive experience, and it got done. So otherwise, unless anybody has any questions, I'll let the evening progress.
Thank you. That was a good report. It helped flesh out some of the text in the packet. Is there any questions for the city attorney? Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Borough Assembly report, and we have a Borough Assembly rep here. Thank you. And I know that she attended a very long school board meeting last week, so Cindy is everywhere, and thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Administration, Clerk, Attorney. I did email back and forth with Brenda Alba at the emergency offices today, and we discussed 2 items, that there might be trees in the harbor, and I was like, I don't think there's trees in the harbor, that's in Resurrection Bay. And she said, well, if they float into the harbor, we wanted to let people know. And then the other one was the Nexel report that was so confusing, and she said that she agreed that that initial post did create some confusion, and will track down the origin and add it to their after-action report, so that things like that don't happen and cause people that may have come to Seward to not come to Seward. After the long school district meeting on Monday, I had a long day at the borough meetings. We started early with our second budget work session, and we have 2 more, all day on the 16th and all day on the 17th. So if anybody has particular questions about the budget, I'll go through this with you. But I can help answer some as they come up as well. On Tuesday, we had ordinance 2021-1950 accepting and appropriating the opioid settlement funds and establishing the opioid settlement fund grant program. That ordinance was introduced. It is the state settlement with 3 major distributors and 1 marketer and manufacturer as part of the national settlement agreement. So coming to the borough, based on available information, it's anticipated that the borough will receive at a minimum approximately $45,960 a year annually for the next 18 years. And that public hearing is on 5/17. And I mentioned this item because a past assembly member gave public comment and was encouraging the assembly to just split the money and give half to South Peninsula Hospital and half to Central Peninsula Hospital, and it would just be smoother and, you know, be done with it, not have to have applications and all that. So I sent the ordinance to the chair of the Seaview Community Services as a program. This is also eligible to native corporations to apply for. And yeah, 45,000, what, 900, whatever is not much. It's 9.492% of the whole monies that are coming in. But, you know, you divide that up, a third of that, if a third came to East, to some entity over here, and it could pay utility bills at a entity for a year. So I'm going to encourage, again, somebody to give public comment, and I will not be supporting just a split between those monies. So The next item on the agenda was the Resolution 2022-028, determining the amount to be provided from local sources for school purposes during fiscal year 2023 and approving the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District total budget. And this was approved unanimously under the consent agenda. And the school district had requested up to the cap, $52,564,284. So while they funded to the cap, that doesn't really help us recruit and retain staff. The top strata on the salary budget for the peninsula is less than the cost for a family to live on the peninsula. So it doesn't really make people from the rest of the nation want to come teach or work at our school district. So work has to be done on that structure to be competitive, and then something also has to be done to lower the insurance premiums for the employees because they're ridiculous. So we've got 2 more work sessions coming up. Any questions about it? Again, most people have access to my phone number, so give me a call if you want to look at numbers. Thanks. Any questions?
Any questions for our borough representative? Again, let me just thank you for being at that school board meeting and doing a great job bringing information back to us and representing Seward on that side of things.
Thank you, Cindy.
Other reports and announcements, we have none. Presentations, we have the Chamber of Commerce quarterly report and a housing survey presentation by Executive Director Kat Sorensen. Welcome, Kat.
1 month off and I'm nervous again. There you go. So I'm handing out.
We're all friends here.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm handing out our hometown guide, which just came in. We're really excited about it. It's the 3rd and final piece to our puzzle of publications to show off our member businesses. And this one is a really useful tool for anyone moving to town for the summer, for good, thinking of moving to town. It has a lot of the resources that we find ourselves asking for on Facebook over and over again. So we're kind of hoping to fill in that void. If you know anybody who is just getting here for the summer or always blows up your phone with questions about where to go, this is definitely a great resource for them. We'll be launching it at our ice cream social event on Thursday at the Sea Life Center from 6 to 8 p.m., which is a I can never say this word, a familiarization for the seasonal staff as they come to town and get to know other businesses and what they offer. So we're really excited about it. I think it's my personal favorite of the 3 because it has information that's really useful to people who are in Seward on the day-to-day. It has some of the city phone numbers in it, so hopefully we get less calls asking us to forward them along to the city. I also do want to take a second to give Miller's Landing and the Miller family a big shout out. They've been really helpful the past day as we have been getting a lot of calls and emails about the situation on Lowell Point Road. So a big thank you to Miller's for helping that community and the business community out there. And before I get into the housing survey, I just want to say too, it was awesome greeting the first cruise ship today, up bright and early, and it was really cool to see how smoothly everything went down there, and excited for a big summer season. And so from that, we recently did a housing needs survey to kind of translate some of the anecdotes that we see in Seward. We often hear that there's a housing crisis, a housing issue, but we're hoping that the chamber to kind of put more numerical data or some sort of harder understand or firmer understanding of what is actually needed instead of just a broad swath of housing, and also what we're losing because housing is such an issue. Do I have a little clicker or do I have to tell you? Okay, next slide. So our goal was to identify needs and impact. Like I said, Seward is rife with anecdotes about the housing crisis, and it was our goal to collect data that identifies if housing is a barrier to business in Seward, and if so, what is the community's need for housing and what the overall cost of that barrier and housing crisis is. So more of a lost cost. Next slide. And so just to keep in mind before I present this, we did advertise and incentivize the survey. So that could have skewed some of the data. It is a self-assessment of needs by the individual, something to keep in mind as we're assessing the data. It was open to people inside and outside of city limits, and somebody opting into taking a housing survey may have a participation bias. Just getting that out there so you know, as we look at this survey data with 153 respondents, what some of those biases in their mind may have been. Next slide. So our first question was, are you personally struggling to find housing in the Seward area? I forgot to take my caption off there, apologies. 36% said yes, with 44 saying no, and a small number under 10% saying not applicable. So that means that 36% of 153 respondents are personally struggling to find housing in the Seward area, which if you extrapolate to a larger portion of the population could potentially mean 35% of people in Seward are struggling to find housing in some way, shape, or form. Next slide. Does your business struggle to hire employees because of lack of housing? And this one we saw a large number of respondents saying yes, nearly 50%. So that's definitely something to consider. While less people may be personally struggling to find housing on their own, it could also be that they're just not getting the chance to come here because businesses are struggling to find employees because of that lack of housing. If available, would you prefer to rent or buy? Nearly 50% said buy, 20 or so percent said rent, and the others said not applicable, probably meaning they have a place to buy or that they are buying or renting currently. So that kind of showcases the makeup of that group of people who are looking to find housing in the Seward area. And so this is a hierarchy of the housing needs, chosen through a ranked choice of multiple choice questions. They were available, so kind of like our new voting, they could rank which ones were most important to them. And overall, 38% of the respondents said an annual rental would fit their needs, meaning a year-round rental property in the Seward area that isn't subject to May move-out dates. Second to that is 1 to 2 bedroom private home at 32% of respondents. So that means those smaller starter homes that we see fly off the market pretty quick, like all of them. Next up would be an apartment or duplex, followed by a seasonal rental at 18%, which would be May through September. 16% would want a 3+ bedroom private home, and then we have some fun ones down there, land at 13%, bunkhouse at 8%, I'd take anything at 8%, mobile home and low-income housing also at 8%. So the top three coming in pretty high at annual rental, 1-2 bedroom, private home, and apartment or duplex, kind of pushing towards those smaller footprint houses and most likely a little bit more affordable. So financial impact. We asked our respondents to put a numerical data behind what they feel like their business is losing because of the housing crisis. Once again, this is a self-assessed number, but if your business is impacted financially by a lack of housing in Seward, please estimate the annual amount of lost revenue. And that came in at over $4.5 million. Solely lost due to a lack of housing. Sorry. I need to get glasses soon, maybe. The reasoning behind that, put some quotes down there for you to kind of think over. I cannot expand my business without additional staff housing, so I would estimate in the 300,000 range. Where I do not have employees, I am dependent on businesses being open, so their access to employees has an impact to my business. We have to close 1 or 2 days a week. It's more about burning out current employees so that there is a higher turnover year over year. We provide them housing, so I would estimate $12,000 a year in expenses for housing our employees. So it seems like the main financial impact is the housing issue in general and not being able to expand because of that. So while there might not be direct losses on the day-to-day basis outside of the closing 1 or 2 days a week, it is inhibiting a lot of local businesses from choosing to expand without putting the housing issue at the forefront of their brain. So it's not a question of if I can expand, it's how do I get housing before I can expand. And so that's pretty much the information that we got in the 150 plus survey responses. It was actually pretty well taken and one of our highest answer surveys so far. So we're excited to see those numbers and kind of help guide our member businesses and some of our decisions in the next year or so based off of those responses. We also put out a Chamber of Commerce survey about how we're doing, and everybody thinks we're great. Do you guys have any questions or anything?
Are there any questions for the Chamber of Commerce Director? I think that was helpful, another piece to try to make sense
Yeah.
of what's going on. We've had a number of presentations to the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, so this is just helpful as we're gathering information, so thank you so much for moving forward with that.
I think it's a really good pair with Nicole Lawrence's presentation too, to have those two with some more of the numbers behind her thoughts and ideas on the housing in general. I've found myself going back and forth between the two, so yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next on the agenda is item 7, public hearing, resolutions requiring a public hearing, resolution 2022-039. Clerk Peck, if you could read it into the minutes, please.
Okay, resolution 2022-039, determining it is in the public's interest and necessary to proceed with a special improvement district for and benefiting lots 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37, Block 2, and lots 4, 5, and 6, Block 3 of the Gateway subdivision, adopting the initial assessment roll, accepting the city manager's recommendation to approve the application received for the Gateway subdivision, and authorizing an expenditure in the amount of $311,873 for water, sewer, and electrical improvements and appropriating funds.
And I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2022-039.
I'll second.
Is there a second?
This item was postponed, so. Oh, no, this is a new
No,
one, sorry,
this
my
one is
mistake,
the-
sorry.
Did you get the second? Who did you call for the second?
Demas?
Demas?
Second.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to city administration for presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received an application for the developer reimbursement program, and I want to note that it was received under the old code. Remember, we recently adopted the new language, so this is submitted under the old language. So the process was that it went before the Planning Commission first and then to council. One thing that has been done in the past has been a 3-step process for approval of this. I combined 2 of the steps, meaning establishing the special assessment, special improvement district, and approving the application. The reason why I did that is those 2 need to happen, and they can happen together. I don't want to establish a special improvement district, but yet the application be denied later. So that's why I combined them, because they made sense to be combined. After all the work, if it's approved, after all of the work is completed, then there will be a new resolution come before you that would actually have all of the costs, the actual assessment of each of the properties. So the approval would be at the end, assessing 50% of the cost to each property. So that's the reimbursement part of it. At this time, this would assess 100%, and then afterwards, then we would reassess the properties. But this is for an expansion of Phase 2, let me get to this, Phase 2 of Mr. Zimmerman's plans. And it benefits 8 properties. The city will pay for the invoices related to actual costs. The developer will be reimbursed 50% of the cost of installation of public utilities through the reduced assessments that I spoke of. And afterwards, then it'll be the follow-up resolution.
Thank you. So I am going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all speakers have spoken, a person may speak for a second time for no more than 1 minute. Has anyone signed in to speak?
There's nobody on the sign-in sheet.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this public hearing item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public hearing. And then I'll ask if there's a question for administration from the dais. Councilmember?
I was just curious, I guess I didn't understand that this was the previous application. So is that what you said, that this was done on a, I guess I'm getting kind of confused. You said this was an application that was from before and we changed the wording of the current application?
Not the current code.
The current code?
Yes.
So does this conflict, I mean, is this going to be any kind of a problem in the way it's coming across from the previous procedure that we had in place and what we're doing now? I mean, it just seems to me like is there enough difference in them to what I'm getting at? I mean, you kind of bridged it, but I'm just wondering if that's really what we should be doing in this instance.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the previous code, there really wasn't a process, and so that was part of the reason why the new code was adopted. It defined the process better, so there really wasn't a full process to follow that I could have chosen to go any route. So that's, the new code really just defines the process. It doesn't change the reimbursement, it doesn't change any of that. It still states that it's up to 50% for approval. So the new code further defined the process. The old code really didn't have a process. It's just been what's been done before. So I followed that process of what's been done before, other than put the two together, because if the special improvement district passes, like say today you created the special improvement district, what had been done previously, a time later, then another resolution would come before you to actually approve the application. They really need to be hand in hand, because you can't have one without the other.
So maybe that follow-up, or backing up to that question, is why did this follow the previous process as opposed to our new code? Is it the timing of how it was turned in?
Yes, I'm sorry if I skipped that part. It was the timing of when it was turned in. This was turned in before the new code was adopted. Did that answer? I think I gave you a long-winded answer.
It was helpful. Go ahead, Councilmember Casagrande.
So I hate to do this, but can you, in a nutshell or briefly, say how it used to be and how it's going to be? Because I'm confused.
I would have to go to the new code to actually, spell it out of how, so how it used to be, and that's, we'd have to go, it's not on that. I don't know if the online code's been updated. So how it used to be was that there really wasn't, always the premise of that up to 50% of the improvements can be reimbursed. What the problem was is there was no mechanism for like the approval checkpoints. And so in the new code, there's more defined. It has to be to the council within so many meetings. It doesn't go to planning commission anymore, and it's really at their request, because they don't approve the application at all. They'd be involved if there was zoning and those types of actions, so they wouldn't need to approve it. So that has come out of the new language. As far as the new language, then again, there's just a better process of how it comes before council and what administration does to get it to council. And in the old language, which I can't verbatim speak to, it didn't really have a process. The premise was there, and it was a good premise, of reimbursement for the developer. But there's also two things that have been, is this the old or the new? Okay, there's also, this is, okay, maybe. Okay, so there's also has been two kind of paths that developers have taken. In the past, I'll speak to what Mr. Zimmerman has done. He has requested the special improvement district path, and that was previously provided in code. And then I use Mr. Harmon as another example, because he has also participated in the program. He actually does all of the work and turns in invoices and then requests 50% back to him, so 50% check to him. So it previously in code, it actually didn't allow that process. And so the new code actually allows the developer to pay for it themselves and receive reimbursement. It allowed the special improvement, but not the I'm going to call it the cash process. It didn't allow that. Does that answer? Okay.
So, Councilmember Osinga?
Well, I was just wanted, just to clarify, we're not going to get into this weird muddled mess where we have an application from before being used for the process that we're using today. That's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, I understand that there was a previous process that was not adequate. We changed it. This is using that previous application for a process that we're using today. We're not going to get in this big muddled mess, right? This is all nice and everything's neat, and we understand what's going on, and developer understands what's going on, and
Developer
we're not
does.
going to have any issues come across by using an application from the previous process, is what I was asking.
Correct, yes.
I'm kind of wordy, but yeah, so.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, is this the last application that we'll see on the previous process?
Yes.
Because all the applications being turned in now will be on what we've since adopted.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So maybe I'm gonna just kind of ask some elementary questions for myself and also for the public. But basically, what I understand is happening right here is we're creating an assessment district. But this is a special assessment district. So basically, once we say yes, if we say yes at this dais, we are saying that we're basically going to fund all the extension of the utilities, and then we're going to create an assessment of approximately $38,000 to each lot that's before us. And then we're also saying yes, if we say yes today, to reimbursing 50% of that assessment. So then there will only be approximately $16,000 assessed to each of those lots
At the end.
for actual utility extension. And the utility extension includes water, sewer, electric, and does it have anything to do with the development of road culverts or, I don't think we have to do sidewalks or lights.
This is water, sewer, making sure, yes, water, sewer only, and yes to everything else that you said. The one thing that will also come back with the next resolution is a repayment. So we will assess 50%, but those have to be paid within a certain time frame, similar to the last agreement with Mr. Zimmerman. So there's a time frame for repayment, and also an interest rate that if it's not paid by then there can be payments, but there'll be interest rate against that. Does that make sense? And also the condition that when the parcels sell, that we recoup the 50% reimbursement, which the borough does for us anyway, but it's attached to the property that it has to be paid at that time to us.
That we're recouping the 50% that we did not give, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We're not recouping the 50% that we gave. I just want to make
Yes.
clarification of that.
Go ahead.
So, just two things, that I'm looking at the applicant's application, and it says, please provide a statement regarding the purpose and use of the property at issue and the ways in which the use promotes the public interest and complies with the city comprehensive plan. And it looks like the applicant has just copied sections of the comprehensive plan, but there's no clarification. So I know for me personally, when we started this developer reimbursement program, what I get a lot of feedback in the profession that I'm in are people wanting to find land and homes that are affordable for, normal, middle income. And my concern is the sky is the limit. Once we give this money to extend the utilities, that we're not saying if they have to be sold. So is there anything in here that says that these lots have to be sold? That's my first question. Is there anything in here that says they can't go above, I don't know, appraised value, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Is there anything, like, I'm not trying to tie the developer's hands behind their back, and is there anything that says that they have to be sold within a certain amount of time if the market demands it? So are we basically saying that we're going to encourage the development, but once it's out the door, we don't mind? And I'm totally on board if that's how all of us feel, but it's mostly a question for us. Like, what exactly are we wanting to get out of this program? I know we want to get people in homes, but How does that look?
Do you want to answer any of those questions before we go to development? Is there any, does the administration feel like the encouragement to sell the property is then the interest that will continue to be
Yes.
assessed?
I do believe that. So as far as on our side, what we're approving is that we will participate in 50% of the installation of utilities. So that's our, our buy-in, so to speak, and our encouragement. And it does not say anything more than that. I want to make sure, this is of course the new code language, but say any more than that as far as we don't put any other stipulations on this. This is strictly about the utilities for us. It isn't about, we're encouraging development and our participation is utilities. On the last participation agreement with Mr. Zimmerman, there was language, and like I said, that's the final resolution, the language that stipulated, it was, I think, a 12%, that's a public document, 12% interest on those, on the properties for that remaining 50%. And it provided a time frame. If I remember correctly, it was November of '21, and he paid them in full before that time frame. We don't have any time frame then for building. We do not have that time frame. We talked about it multiple times. I remember talking to Brooks about it quite often, but we do not have that in the code. Our participation is through the utilities, if that makes sense.
Is there any further discussion?
I do. So basically, from what I understand, the developer only needs to sell about one lot, maybe like one and some, to be able to cover their portion of extending the utilities. And I understand that what we're trying to do is extend our utilities, but are we trying to extend our utilities to get people to plug into them and turn them on? Or are we just extending our utilities to extend our utilities?
So again, I'll just clarify with the administration the question I have. So if they don't sell a lot, then they'll pay an interest penalty on that lot until it's sold? Or can they pay their half back and not pay an interest penalty?
They can pay their half back and not pay the interest penalty. It is based on what they owe the city.
Is there any further discussion?
I wondered if I made the intent in the language and code is the intent of this chapter to permit the city, when funds are available, to reimburse a developer for up to 50% of the cost of extending public utilities to the developer's undeveloped property in order to incentivize installation of public utilities and property development within city boundaries. So that's the intent of the program.
Is to incentivize, but it doesn't say to mandate sales or it says to incentivize. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead.
So going back to incentivize the extension of utilities, correct?
Correct.
So I guess all I want to know from council, so that I know how to vote, is what was like the intention behind that? Just to extend the utilities, or were we extending the utilities with I guess we should have made it more clear in the language if we wanted people to hook into our utilities. So maybe a better clarification of the intent of that would have been to encourage users to come onto our utility systems.
You can ask a question, people don't have to discuss, but did you have any comments?
I'm almost thinking these are just, that's an issue that's not really part of this, if it wasn't part of the original. I think it's just a different discussion. I mean, we can incentivize, and I think it's in the wording, but this agreement's already written in the way, this process is already done. We can modify it in the future, but for this particular instance, I think we're kind of stuck with what we have.
I have a question to administration. So are the utilities put in at this point?
They're not, no.
They're not, okay. So
Waiting
it's
approval.
future. Any other discussions?
I would say I agree with Councilmember Osenga in that if we do think that we want to discuss modifying the program, I'm open to that because it's a new program and we haven't had a lot of experience with we've had 1 or 2 developers, but I think with this application, it's suitable to approve it.
Did you have further comment?
Yeah, my comment is that there are no utilities extended in these lots at this time. And once we approve this, we will be funding, the city will be funding that extension. And then it will come back before us again to approve the final bill.
Yes.
But no matter what the final bill is, we're agreeing to pay at least half of $311,000.
Madam Mayor, if I may, yes, that's what this resolution states. The council can reduce it. The language is up to 50%. I'm recommending 50%, but you can reduce it if you choose to do that. The code allows you to do that.
Let me check and see, are there any other comments? Okay, go ahead.
So if we were to reduce it, would it happen now or at the later date when the final bill comes before us?
Madam Mayor, I would recommend doing it now so that the developer knows the amount.
And so just for the public who's watching, in section 5, it says the funding is appropriated from the Developer Incentive and Reimbursement Fund. So that's a fund set up by council for private contractors to extend utilities, and then we use this as funding to encourage private, instead of us putting in the utilities in a hole, we are encouraging private enterprise to do that. Correct. Did you have a comment?
I do have a follow-up question on that for the public. So if Matt, if the city manager could just enlighten all of us, how much money is in that fund at this current time and where the most current funding came from?
There's approximately $1.3 million. $500,000 of that came from the NCL funding, and the remaining balance was previously funded by council.
Can you clarify what NCL is?
Norwegian Cruise Line.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Clerk Peck, if we could call for the vote, please.
Okay, voting on resolution 2022-039. Demas?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Casagrande?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Major Terry?
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has been approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is unfinished business, resolution 2022-052. If you could read the title into the minutes, please.
Resolution 2022-052, authorizing the city manager to enter into a 3-year sole source agreement with T2 Systems to provide parking enforcement and permit management software in an amount not to exceed $31,297 and appropriating funds. This resolution was postponed on April 11th and 25th, 2022, and the main motion is already back on the floor.
So we have this motion on the floor. It's been motioned and seconded, and I'll turn it over to administration to make comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this time, administration requests the council fail this resolution. While I think this is a viable product, there's a couple of components that need to come into place, and one being, which I know that our attorney has been working on, an ordinance that allows this mechanism for enforcement, and he has already written it. However, if we fail this now, it gives us more time on the ordinance to bring that before you, and we can do this during the fall and winter months to have a more robust discussion and product.
Any discussion? I do want to say, I think there's a process in place and maybe even some current software that the city has. Like, I do want us to be enforcing parking in the harbor because I think there's some safety issues. I also think there's we want to make sure our handicap tag visitors have access. I think there are some things that I hope that I think we're looking for employees, but that there's something down there being done so people understand that we are enforcing our parking code. So I don't know if you have any comments on that, but I just want to encourage administration, I don't want the public to think just because this is failing doesn't mean that there's no one enforcing parking currently in our boat harbor, so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for that clarification. And one thing that I wanted to clarify from a previous meeting that it was stated is that the city has trouble with the enforcement of the handicap parking and fire lane, and that is the area that the police department enforces, because that is a criminal activity, actually, parking in a handicap in a fire lane, so automatically the police respond to that. The other issue that we've been previously stated that we're continuing to work on, and again, I want to take the following winter to work on that, is the enforcement on in the other parking areas, because one option available to us is towing a vehicle. However, we don't have a tow service that we can call. The tow service is busy often, and we're not able to get a tow to tow a vehicle out. So there are other mechanisms that we want to put into place, and this system could do some of those, but we need further research and discussion on it.
And it's probably beating a dead horse, but I do want to say also in Anchorage, they're moving to the parking on your phone.
Absolutely.
So all of that infrastructure is expensive and has to be replaced. I think you have to have one, at least for people that don't have the app. But as we're looking at systems, let's make sure that we're looking at mobile, because then we don't have to keep the infrastructure maintained, which is a big part of the expense.
Yes.
I think we're ready for a vote. Sorry, people. Clerk Peck.
Okay, voting on Resolution 2022-052. McClure.
No.
Casagrande.
No.
Demas.
No.
Calhoun.
No.
Osenga.
No.
Mayor Perry.
No.
That resolution has failed.
Next on the agenda is Resolution 2022-067. If the clerk could read that into the minutes, please.
Resolution 2022-067, directing the city manager to develop a timeline and process for examining the advantages and disadvantages of selling the electric utility and bring recommendations back to the city council for adoption.
And since I brought this forward and sponsored it, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
I won't turn it over to administration. I'll speak to this resolution. This came for a vote before the citizens of Seward. Actually, it's been quite a while, in 2000. So, and since that time, on and off, we've talked about selling our utility. And I think most recently with some of the sales statewide, the topic is coming up more and more. And this resolution is not proposing that we sell the electric utility. What this resolution does is it puts it with administration to take a look at it, develop not only a timeline, but also get the pros and cons. I want to highlight in this resolution, it's crucial to have ample public involvement, full vetting of the advantages and the disadvantages, and any education prior to another ballot proposition. Some of the things that I want to be under consideration include the quality of electrical service and reasonable rates. Since we own the utility, we are in charge of managing the city assets for the long-term benefits of the citizens. It's not just against our customers, administration, it's our citizens. And other items to consider include the safety and accessibility for our customers, providing timely response to inquiries, planning for and making system improvements, future economic development, retaining local generation. Those generations are a big boon for this community because we know we will never be without power for more than an hour because we have that backup. So, that's something to look at, to making sure that if our electric utility, if we're looking at selling the electric utility, that there's an agreement to keep that backup generation in place. And definitely, we're studying the option. We're not studying to move forward with the sale. We're looking at an option, and the city manager, administration will bring the process and timeline recommendations to us for approval at the June 13 regular council meeting, and I'll let them speak to that if that's too fast of a timeline or if that needs to be changed. But again, it's coming up more and more, and we're hearing about the talk, so before we can't enter into those discussions, administration can't enter into those discussions until they have some direction from council to explore, in my opinion, just in the effort of transparency, just to let people know what we're doing and get the word out there. And I'll ask Councilmember Calhoun if I missed anything, or if there's anything you want to highlight.
I don't think you missed anything. I think it's just something, as you say, that's been discussed many, many times since 2000, and I was involved in that. I was on the council in 2000, and I remember all of that, and there was a lot of public input education at that time, town hall meetings, all that kind of stuff, and there was interest, and there has been discussions all the time since then. It hasn't stopped. And I think it's a good idea just to look at the options, as long as everybody understands this is not a motion to try and sell it. This is simply a motion to gather information, figure out good and bad, and ultimately the people in Seward will end up making that decision anyway, not just us. I think it's a great idea.
Is there any further discussion? And then to administration, that date's in there. I don't know how administration feels about that date with everything going on, if we need to amend that, or if we could get closer and amend it if it seems like it's possible at this point.
Madam Mayor, I did speak to our Director, Electric Manager, and we do think that we can meet the date. I guess I pause a little with all that we've got going on, but we can also, if necessary, I'm thinking at the next meeting, provide an update, and if we need more time, request that time.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Clerk, if you could go ahead and call for the vote, please.
Okay, voting on resolution 2022-067. McClure.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
Casagrande.
Yes.
Dumas.
Yes.
Mayor Carey.
Yes.
That resolution has been approved.
Next on the agenda is other new business items. It's a non-objection to the renewal of the liquor license number 5903, Restaurant Eating Place, Public Convenience for the Lone Chicharron Taqueria. Go ahead.
I need to declare a conflict of interest for that. In the owner of the corporation that the Lone Chicharron Taqueria leases their space from, so I feel I have a conflict.
So we have a pretty strict conflict. So you have a substantial financial conflict of interest. Would you say that you obtain more than $1,000 in one instance, or $5,000 over a course of a year from that business?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that, I'm gonna go ahead and rule that you do have a conflict of interest. Since Councilmember Dumas has left the dais, I'll go ahead and move for non-objection to the renewal of the Restaurant Eating Place Public Convenience for the Lone Chicharron Taqueria.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Clerk Peck, if you could call for the vote, please.
Okay, voting on the non-objection to the Lone Chicharron liquor license. Osenga.
Yes.
McClure.
Yes.
Casagrande.
Yes.
Calhoun.
Yes.
Mayor Carey.
Yes.
All right, that has been approved.
Thank you. Councilmember Dumas, you can return to the dais. We have two informational items and reports. The National Small Business Week proclamation is included in our packet. I was unable to attend their meeting, and Vice Mayor Sue McClure attended and read it to that group. So we've had a number of conferences. I don't know if you want to say a few words about.
Just that they were very friendly, wonderful people, and eager to be in Seward and help out small businesses. We talked small.
And then also listed under informational items and report is the city financials for the period ending December 31st, 2021. Those were provided as a laydown, and those are available on Laserfiche. So you just, if you need help going through that, you go to city legislation, you can do browse city council, and you can go to our most current meeting, and that will be listed as a laydown item if you'd like to see that. And if you need any help, you can always call the clerk. And next on the item is city comments, or citizen comments. You do not have to be signed up, so I'll just look to the audience out there and see if there's anyone that wants to provide citizen comments. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll come back to council administration comments, and I'll start off with administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding the city financials, there will be a resolution before you, probably within the next 6 weeks, I would say. As you can see, there's excess revenue over expenses of $2.4 million in the general fund, and so there will be a resolution that designates where those funds go. So that will come before you along with other items, financial items.
Thank you. And now I'll go to council comments. Councilmember Casagrande.
I'd like to thank Tom Swan, Craig Ambrosiani, and who else did we give an award to? Sorry. Yeah. Gary wasn't here tonight. I felt like there was Cheryl. Cheryl. Oh, geez.
That's what you get.
I was so focused on telling not Gary. Okay, sorry. For all your service and dedication to the city. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the SBA group that was here in town. I was honored that they personally stopped into my business. There was a team of 4 of them, and it was so heartwarming and just like amazing because one of the ladies that was there with the SBA was a huge guide for me during my EIDL loan process through all the economic development. So it was just so such an impression for me because it always seems like the federal level of things are just like a name and an email or whatnot. So when they showed up at my doorstep, it was really cool. And so I'm just really grateful for that group. It's a really well-working group, and it's nice to have their presence in Seward, and they did say they would be back.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Calhoun.
Just a couple of things. Also, on May 21st, that is Armed Forces Day. And that's always been part of the kind of the harbor opening weekend time frame since that started. So Armed Forces Day, May 21st. And just a quick note, people probably saw that, but I thought I'd throw it out there that there is a burn ban starting tomorrow. And you can have, I guess, a 3-foot fire as long as it's, you know, cleared out well around and there's water and stuff available. But the borough, Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island have a burn ban starting tomorrow.
Great.
And I wanted to say thank you to Cindy Eklund and to Kat Sorensen for their great reports. It's really good to get all that information on a regular basis like that. They're doing a great job. Also wanted to say thank you to Planning and Zoning for the good work that they've been doing. I know the Hemlock, proposed Hemlock subdivision has been a point of a lot of discussion, and I think the more we can make it clear to people what the intents are and what's actually trying to be done is always a good thing. And I think exploring the possibility of a utility sale, again, we'll have to go through that transparency process and make sure that the community is very well informed and involved in that, as it does affect everybody in that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Councilmember Osinga.
Let's see, thank you to Cheryl and Tom and Craig for their service to the city. The slide was a pretty big thing, so thanks to admin for your administration for your guys' response, timely response, and reaction time to it. Thank you to Miller's Landing for being so helpful to the people that are, transferring people from here to there and back. And Medco crew, be safe out there.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMoss?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to administration for your response time on the slide, and just the communication is so important, and I thought it was just so well done, and just really appreciate you guys and all the work that you do, and that's it. Thanks.
Vice Mayor?
Well, what they all said, plus I wanted to thank the city for, it looked like the bike rodeo, they call it, that on Saturday was quite successful. And the cleanup, I participated like I always do, but I only took 3 bags this year because there had been a lot of activity prior to Saturday. The school kids have been out, it looked like, but I managed fairly quickly to fill up 3 bags. So there's, as you're walking around, if you carry a bag, there's still litter out there, but that was a good thing. I was going to mention the burn ban, so thank you. That needs to be heard loud and clear because we're getting wind and it's really, believe it or not, dry, really dry right now. And in my walking around in the neighborhood, it's wonderful to see that things are happening at the new animal shelter. There's been digging and stuff, so I can't speak to, the status, but it's happening and we're all excited about that. And that's all I got.
I won't repeat comments, but I agree with everyone's comments. And I just wanted to add again that we've had a lot of off-season or start-of-season conferences here. The Corps of Engineers were here. I just want to thank the Public Works Director, Doug, for facilitating that. The city manager and I went and thanked them, and I took the opportunity to ask them to take a look at our long runway at the airport to see if there was anything that could be done with that. I want to note that the rec center has kicked off. There's an email that's Seward Recreation Center at victusadvisors.com, which I'm saying that kind of fast. People can text me or call me and I can send that to them. They're looking for input, but there's also going to be a community survey that goes out that the city will assist with. We'll use the clerk's distribution. We'll try to get it to as many groups. The schools we talked about, so that survey will look at what that rec center the needs it should meet in the community. I want to talk about the school board meeting. I did go to that meeting and I read the resolution that we passed that included, looking at the funding formula again, the changes to that to help with our teachers at the school, part and full-time teachers. Like again, we're losing our athletic director. Our middle school principal is full-time, but he also covers Moose Pass and Hope, so he's only part-time at the middle school. So there's lots of things that need to change there, and there were many parents and students that came out. The other piece is our track. We are the only track on the Kenai Peninsula Borough that hasn't been replaced, and it's dismal, and that's a key part of our youth, having that ability. So I think we need to start continue to pester our school board and school district. We might be out of sight, but we need to make sure we're not out of mind and make sure that that track gets replaced. I want to just say I was happy to see that there are some charges brought in the Homer case where Duffy, and I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm just going to say Duffy was missing. I just want people to know that we don't tolerate crime of that nature in the Kenai Peninsula, and so that leads me into my comments. I want to thank specifically Seward PD, Deputy Chief Carl Schaefermeyer and the current police chief for their work with the Preston Atwood case. Last week, all defendants were, they completed their plea deals and hearings, and that judge was very specific that the charges and the plea deals that those criminals took was very much helped by the amount of evidence and the work that was put forward by our police department. And that was, that's a wound to our community that will never heal. But we want to thank our police department for doing a good job and just let people know that we do care about our own, and criminal activity is not tolerated, whether it's in this community or outside city limits. So again, just thank you to the police department. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn at just before 8:30.